Friends, wake up and stay sharp. On January 28, 2026, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell announced in Washington that the Fed would keep the federal funds rate unchanged at 3.5% to 3.75%, while quietly deleting language warning of downside risks to employment. Facing the global media, he delivered the official verdict. Economic activity continues to expand at a solid pace. Almost at the exact same time, America's second-largest private employer Amazon sent out cold-blooded layoff notices to its core divisions. Another 16,000 white-collar employees were cut. Pay close attention to the destructive power of this data set. Combined with the 14,000 layoffs announced last October, Amazon has eliminated nearly 30,000 jobs in just 3 months. These weren't warehouse workers. These were AWS cloud engineers earning hundreds of thousands a year, retail division managers, and core HR personnel. If you believe the Fed, the labor market is rock solid, maybe even overheating. But if you look at Amazon, you'll see a full-scale white-collar recession aimed squarely at the middle-class elite. The root of this macro temperature gap lies in a fatal mismatch of statistical dimensions. The Fed focuses on lagging aggregate unemployment data, where massive hiring in low-end service jobs masks the collapse at the top. Capital markets, on the other hand, see forward-looking structural breakdowns. Led by Amazon, tech giants are conducting a blood replacement surgery centered on AI substitution under the banner of cutting bureaucracy. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy put it bluntly, "We will need fewer people to do some of the jobs that are being done today."
His so-called stability is a mirage built on blue-collar employment. Amazon's 30,000 layoff notices reflect the real, geological shift happening beneath the U.S. economy. If the January 28th layoffs were a thunderclap, then stretching the timeline and stitching together fragmented signals reveals the truth. This is not a defensive move against a business cycle. It is a carefully planned, white-collar targeted elimination event. In the past, tech layoffs followed logic like rank and yank or business contraction, usually hurting fringe departments or hourly logistics workers. This time, the blade landed precisely on the company's main arteries. According to Reuters and leaked internal emails, the hardest-hit areas were Oz, core retail management, and the HR division known internally as PXT. Here's the absurd detail you must notice. Oz is Amazon's profit engine, contributing the majority of operating income and just posted its strongest revenue growth since 2022. Companies fire employees from divisions that are minting cash unless the underlying job logic has already been completely rewritten by something more efficient. That brings us to the internal coding name accidentally leaked by an executive email, Project Dawn, a hopeful name that became the darkest hour for 30,000 middle-class professionals.
This isn't bracing for winter. This is emptying the cage and replacing the bird. Andy Jassy had already been explicit in an earlier memo. As we roll out more generative AI and agent systems, we will need fewer people to do some of the work being done today. That sentence carries enormous weight. It reveals the irreversible structural substitution underway across Silicon Valley. What used to require armies of pre-sales, engineers, operations, staff, and HR teams is now being taken over by AI agents. Code assistants write and optimize software automatically. AI customer systems handle complex enterprise needs. Automation takes over data center operations. The old equation business growth equals hiring more people was shattered in 2026. The new formula is brutally simple. Business growth equals more computing power plus fewer intermediaries. That's why AWS revenue can surge 20% while layoffs still happen. In the AI arms race, carbon-based labor has high marginal costs, while silicon-based compute has exponential marginal returns. And don't fool yourself into thinking this is isolated. The resonance is terrifying. The same week Amazon announced layoffs, Meta gutted Reality Labs to redirect resources into AI wearables. Pinterest cut 15% to free up funds for AI investment. Even ASML announced 1,700 management cuts. This marks a fundamental shift in Silicon Valley's survival logic. The past decade rewarded scale. Companies hoarded talent even without work. Layoffs meant cash trouble. In 2026, AI is heavy industry. Capital rewards efficiency. Layoffs happen not because companies are broke, but because they no longer need you. This is a dimensional strike against the middle layer. Once prized skills like project coordination, cross-department communication, and process optimization are now just bureaucratic friction next to AI's execution speed. This is not just Amazon, Meta, Pinterest, and even ASML sitting at the crown of the semiconductor supply chain are cutting management roles. Silicon Valley's core logic has shifted paradigms from a decade of hiring for growth to 2026's cutting for efficiency. At this moment, Powell's models have failed. Amazon's 30,000 pink slips are an industry-wide efficiency declaration to Wall Street. I'm shedding old baggage to compete for the next throne. For shareholders, it may boost stock prices. For millions of middle-class families dependent on big tech ecosystems, it signals a silent balance sheet recession. These AWS engineers and HR managers were the backbone of U.S. consumption. The mortgages, private schools, Starbucks, Whole Foods. When income expectations collapse and 90-day job transitions expire with no offers, the shock will spread fast. Yet Washington remains strangely insulated. In Powell's macro view, these collapsing micro-realities are flattened by big numbers. He keeps staring at lagging employment data polished by low-end service jobs, dreaming of economic resilience. On the same day, Amazon sent 16,000 termination notices in Seattle. The FOMC wrapped up its two-day meeting in Washington. While tech giants were cutting limbs to survive, the Fed projected unnerving composure. In its January 28 statement, the Fed not only held rates steady, but deleted the line about rising downside risks to employment. In central bank language, this deletion is loud. It signals that policymakers believe labor market warnings are over. The statement described economic activity as expanding at a solid pace, and noted signs of stabilization in unemployment. Powell doubled down at the press conference, claiming labor risks had eased, and that creates a massive paradox. How can America's second-largest private employer execute its largest structural layoff in 31 years, while the Fed chair insists the job market looks great? This isn't a perspective gap, it's a model failure. Powell can TC those 30,000 workers because macro data is undergoing an unprecedented K-shaped camouflage. There are three blind spots you must understand. Blind spot 1. The average trapped Fed relies on payrolls and headline unemployment. In 2026, these aggregates have lost sensitivity. The labor market is deeply K-shaped. At the lower end, immigration limits and blue-collar shortages leave hotels, restaurants, and healthcare desperate for workers. Low-wage hiring inflates job numbers and offsets tech layoffs on paper. At the upper end, AWS engineers, Meta developers, ASML managers, a silent depression is unfolding. In the Fed's model, a $300,000 cloud architect job disappearing is statistically equal to a $20 an hour server job added. That equivalence hides massive economic decay. High-income job losses erase mortgages, luxury consumption, and tax revenue multipliers. 10 low-wage jobs can't replace. Powell saw stable unemployment and assumed a stable foundation, missing the internal collapse. Blind spot 2. The consumer confidence cliff if jobs data lags. Consumer confidence leads and it's already flashing red. January consumer confidence plunged to 84.5, the lowest since May 2014. The collapse shows one lethal trend. High-income households are losing confidence fast. This is white-collar recession spilling into consumption. The past 2 years of resilience came from wealthy consumers. When Amazon and Meta cut for AI substitution, income expectations among top earners shatter. These households react first: defensive saving, postponed home purchases, canceled luxury travel, reduced discretionary spending. Powell acknowledged downbeat sentiment, but insisted actual spending remains resilient. That view ignores lag risk. Spending changes trail confidence by 1 or 2 quarters. When high-net-worth wallets snap shut, domestic demand stalls and rate cuts usually come too late. Blind spot 3. Cracks in policy consensus. The Fed isn't unified. This meeting saw a rare anomaly. Governors Christopher Waller and Milan dissented, calling for an immediate 25 BP rate cut. Waller, long a hawk, flipping is a signal. Analysts believe his vote reflects political hedging ahead of the election, and Trump pressure distancing from Powell's rigidity. Consensus fracture undermines the economic resilience story. It suggests holding rates steady may reflect inflation, inertia, not genuine risk assessment. History shows the Fed lags markets. Payrolls are the rearview mirror. Amazon layoff emails and collapsing confidence are the windshield. Right now, corporations are aggressively cutting costs via AI. Consumers face confidence shock, and policymakers sit still due to fake service sector strength. This mismatch is primed for violent correction. Now mark this red alert window on your calendar. Now through the end of March earnings season. Why March? Because it's a singularity where micro layoffs, macro political fracture, and financial delivery crises can resonate. Why did Yasi time layoffs for late January? Precision positioning. Cutting before annual and Q1 reports lets restructuring costs be buried or labeled one time. From the next quarter onward, financials show a leaner, sexier margin story. Wall Street's taste has changed. It no longer pays for revenue growth, it pays for labor efficiency. Amazon's stock held firm post. The message was clear: cut carbon labor, buy silicon compute, get rewarded. That feedback loop will trigger herding before March. Meta already followed, Pinterest too. When Google, Microsoft, and Salesforce see Amazon rewarded, imitation becomes the only rational move. Expect a dense wave of AI-branded white-collar layoffs before March, driven by stock price management, not losses. And don't ignore Fed coup risk. Waller's dissent is explosive. Board-level dissent is rare, especially under Powell's consensus push. His shift hints at a bet that labor will crack faster than Powell expects, planting a bomb under the March FOMC. Markets price steady. Powell bets jobs hold, one bad payroll print, and Waller's warning detonates. The Fed flips from calm to panic, and exits get crowded fast. Finally, the most lethal risk may come from an overlooked corner: COMEX silver futures. March is a major delivery month. Registered deliverable silver sits near 110 million ounces. Yet in non-delivery January alone, over 40 million ounces requested delivery, 20x normal levels. That suggests industrial capital or distrustful central banks using futures to extract physical metal. If March demand hits 80 million ounces, inventories are drained. If COMEX fails delivery or forces cash settlement, paper silver collapses. Liquidity shockwaves slam gold, silver, and the dollar simultaneously. While the Fed watches inflation decimals, the house may already be burning. So before March, we face a triple overlay: layoff wave plus consensus fracture plus delivery crisis.
What should ordinary investors do in this crazy market? Here are 3 crucial steps to take right now. First, you need to immediately get rid of the middle-class consumption illusion. The lifestyle you think you can afford might be a trap. It's time to get real about your spending. Second, closely follow the capital expenditures of big tech companies. Where are they putting their money? That's where the real growth is happening. Their spending is a roadmap to the future. Third, defend your hard asset core positions. Things like real estate, gold, and other tangible assets are your fortress against market storms. Don't let them go. Mark my words, spring 2026 will not be calm. In this world of financial noise, the survival rule is simple: ignore what they say, watch what they do. I hope you're prepared before the next big move hits. I'm Ultra Bull Macro. Follow me for more insights. See you in the next one.